With this month of Lonely Trollops, I'm reading Cousin Henry, an 1879 short novel by Anthony Trollope. Uh, Actually, very short for a Trollope novel. It was published, I think, in 2 volumes. Is like 24 chapters. So it's a short, sharp story, very much focused on Cousin Henry. Cousin Henry is one of the a nephew of Inderford Jones, owner of the Lanfear estate in Wales, where the old man is dying, and he has the kind of the impulse that I need to kind of settle my estate, and he's being torn because if he did what was kind of the traditional thing, which is to entail the property, it would go to the oldest living male heir, which would be Henry Jones. But he's also got another relative, a niece, Isabel Broderick, who has stayed with him. He is loved by all the people around, knows all the tenants of the lands, and it's like that's who he really, really wants to give it to. And he's kind of gone back and forth on what will I do now. Isabel is a very kind of upright, a good character, and she's like, no, you should settle it on Cousin Henry. He's the one who's like, that's the tradition, that's the proper way of preserving the land. That's always how it's like. It's the kind of respect of the land, that's what we should do. And he's like, oh, I don't know, and he's go back and forth. He indeed does actually write up a will, giving this estate to Henry, even though he doesn't really like the guy, and giving a thing of like £4,000 to Isabel. It turns out that he's actually spent this money to gain back some of the land that had been lost from the estate, so that actually isn't there. So it's sort of more of a symbolic thing. But he decides, okay, I'm going to bring up Henry because I'm leaving the land. But the more Henry is there, the more people just dislike him. He is somebody who's described at the beginning of the book. He was as a young boy, he was given to lying, and as he's gotten older, he seems to have gotten better. He did kind of ask for money from his uncle because he'd run up bills and stuff like that. But now he's a clerk in London, a law clerk in London, and he seems to be kind of making a go of things. He seems to be fairly respectable, so they invite him up. But still, nobody likes him. He's kind of slimy. He gets Inderford Jones sort of says, like, to Isabel, you should marry him because that way you would get the land. And Isabel's like, I would never do that. I despise him. And it's just like there's a revulsion there that she just has on the core even before the events of the novel unfold. And she says, like, I'm only ever going to love for reasons of, I'm only going to marry for love. I would never marry for property and stuff like that. And indeed, she has someone back in Hereford, where her family is. There is a poor cleric that she's like, oh, I really love him. And so she asks her uncle, is like, okay, if I marry him. And at this point, he was thinking, I'm going to settle the property on her. And it's like, well, his father was an innkeeper. Oh, that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good. And she's like, okay, fine. And that's it. She never mentions again, and she declines it. She declines this guy that she really loves because she also loves her uncle and feels the great duty of he is the one who is going to settle this on her, and stuff like that. As it falls out in the novel, he actually seems he because of Henry being such a kind of just off-putting guy, he tries to actually goes like, oh, I would get better lock on the property if I propose to Isabel. So he tries proposing to her, saying like, well, it's a good deal, you'll make money off of it, basically, kind of thing, in a way. And she's like, I would never marry you. And again, she says, just like, I despise you. And I'm sorry to speak. And she's like, she kind of regrets immediately, being so rude to him, but it's like, no, I could never love you. And that's the only way I would ever do anything like that. And she gives him advice. She says, look, he's decided on you for the property. Just leave him alone because you personally just piss him off. If the more you press him, the more you try and ingratiate yourself with him, the more he's going to dislike you. And he's and also don't tell him that you tried to propose to marriage to me, because that's not going to come off well either. And he chooses to ignore both of these things. He presses himself in with the old man again, who is dying and does not really want to spend the last days with this guy, and he's also pissed off because he's like, oh, you basically you proposed it as like a contract of a look what you're gonna get, young lady, if you do my thing. And it's like, you've totally misjudged my niece there, and all that results in him switching switching the will again. But he doesn't call in his lawyer. He calls a couple of local farmers to witness what he has just carefully copied out himself. And then he dies. And as he dies, he lets Isabel know it's been done. It's been done. And she understands that to say like, oh, I think he switched his will again. But she doesn't say anything because she doesn't know what it means. Maybe it's just the dying words of an old man, and maybe it's not particularly got anything like that. But when they pull out the will, it is the older of the wills. The newest will is not there, and the farmers who witnessed it are quite outraged. It's like, no, there is a will. There is a will. And so they search the family seat, looking for the will. Cousin Henry sitting in the library, very still, not helping, not saying anything, watching, sweating, looking nervous, guilty as hell, which, maybe he's nervous because it's like, oh, maybe I'm going to lose it all again. Maybe he doesn't know anything. And he's just sort of sitting there. And everyone goes away. And this is when I guess we get into the crux of the novel, is that, yes, the second will was made and it was preserved. And Cousin Henry had picked up one of the sermon books of collected sermons that Innifer Jones was reading at the kind of last parts of his life, and finds the will inside and shuts it and goes and puts it away back in the bookshelf without saying anything. And the rest of the novel is the fact that Cousin Henry is a really unlikable guy. He is he's a coward. He's somebody who's like actually not villainous enough. If he was villainous enough, he would immediately burn the will. He would immediately have it destroyed. He would do all these kind of dastardly things, but he can't. There's a part of him that says like, I'm not a bad person. And there's like lots of rationalizations. There's lots of him trying to wiggle out of stuff. There's a lot of him just getting kind of abused by the people here because, they'll ask him direct questions and he'll say, I don't know where it's like, I have not hidden the will. I have not I've not destroyed it. And it's like, everyone can say like, you are guilty as sin, but we can't prove anything. And meanwhile, Isabel is like, she's gone back to Hereford, and she's like, oh no, I can't marry you still because now I'm a poor woman, and I'm not going to take the £4,000 that the family lawyer, Mr. Apjohn, has said, like, look, to Cousin Henry, like, look, you still have to actually honor this £4,000, even though we don't actually have the money. We can just kind of work it off the estate, can't we? And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, fine. I don't think she'll take it. And it's like, they take that to mean he's like trying to wiggle out of it. It's like, no. We'll get it. And she's like, no, I would never take money from that man. I would never take money from that man, because she knows, she can tell by how he was sweating and stuff like that. And so the rest of the novel is just watching Cousin Henry squirm. It's much more about, actually, this is a good novel for that. Hey, the title character is the focus, and watching him squirm and watching him wiggle, it almost reminds me in some ways of like a Dostoevsky character, of just like kind of an internal, just kind of him wiggling around. I mean, it's Trollope, so it's done in maybe a much more humane, kind of a light sort of way, but it's a kind of a fun later Trollope novel where you get to just focus in on this despicable, cowardly, but in some ways also semi-sympathetic character. You can't help but pity him. And also actually a good examination of the idea of the entail of this whole thing of preserving the land, of you want to have this idea of like, you want to have the eldest son take the property, and there being, it's not just kind of a thing of keeping wealth, but of the things of the care of the land, the care of this property, the care of the people that live upon it, and how much that interests everybody around, not just simply the Inderford Jones, that family. So yeah, it was a fun quick read of a Lonely Trollop this month. And yeah, well, I guess we'll see what next month brings. All right, more videos later.